Hey, have you been worried about recession? You hear a lot of people talking about it. You hear people talk about, oh, the real estate market's crashing. Oh, the stock market's crashing. This is going to crash. That's going to crash. We're in a recession. We're going to be in a recession. Today, I want to share with you how to create your own economy or how to avoid recession by creating your own economy. Because when I think about, people talk about the economy, and the economy is a thing, but it's not the only thing, right? And so there are macro and micro economies. And we're going to talk about macroeconomies and microeconomies. And if your microeconomy is dialed in, the macroeconomy doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't necessarily impact your life in a negative way. In fact, if your microeconomy is correct, like if it's set up properly, if the macroeconomy goes into a recession or a depression, that can actually make you wealthier. So what is a recession? What's a depression? Somebody said, what's the difference between a depression and a recession? And the person said, well, a recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. Can I get a witness? Right? But I'm going to give you what I looked it up, so I'm going to give you the definition of the economy. What is an economy? The term economy refers to a system of production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services within a particular sociographic meaning people, right? Within a particular sociographic sector in both macro and microeconomies. When I say macroeconomies, I'm talking about globally. So it refers to the production and distribution and consumption of goods and services within globally, but then nationally, then regionally, then locally, then family, and then individually. And there are economies for each one of those. There's the global economy. There are national economies. The global economy is like the economy as a whole, right? But the global economy may be doing not so great, but there are individual nations within the global economy that are doing fine, right? There are national economies. The national economy may be doing great, but there are people within that nation who are doing terribly. There may be people, a national economy that's doing poorly, but within that economy, there are people who are doing great. My top affiliate lives in India. India does not have the most booming economy in the world as a national economy. It doesn't have the most booming, but this guy is my top affiliate. And I'm talking about, he's made I paid him multiple six figures. So his economy is very different than the economy of the nation that he lives in, right? And then you have regional economies, and you have some regional economies that are doing well. And we might think in the United States of America as a regional economy as a state economy. You have some states that are booming, but there are people within those states that are doing terrible. Like the GDP of the state of California is one of the highest in the nation, but you go to California and you see more people living on the street than any place else I've been recently. Right? So what's the difference? There's a difference between the economy and your economy. And while the economy may affect you, your economy will impact you. And you want to make sure you set your economy up in such a way that when it impacts you in a great way. So when I think about the economy, it encompasses all the activities related to the management of resources, including labor, capital, and natural resources. To meet the needs and wants of individuals and businesses, the economy is often measured by indicators like GDP, gross domestic product, employment rates, inflation rates, and it's a reflection of the overall health and functionality of a society's economic system. That's when I say economy, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's look at first and foremost how to create, like how you can make sure your economy is thriving regardless of what the economy around you is doing. Because that's really what we care about, right? Like, I mean, we care about the economy as a whole, but we care the most about our economy being whole. Can I get a witness? Right? And so how can we do that? Well, if an economy is the production of goods and service, then your economy, your own personal economy, is going to be equal to and definitely not greater than your ability to produce usable or consumable products or services for someone other than you. I'm going to say that again. Your own personal economy is going to be determined by your ability to produce usable or consumable products or services for someone other than you. That's what's going to determine your economy. So you have to go out into the marketplace and find a hole or a need. There's something missing in somebody else's life. And then you have to either already possess the skill to fix that problem, or you have to be willing to go sacrifice and learn the skill to fix that problem. Because your wealth is going to be in direct proportion to your ability to solve someone else's problems. The bigger the problems for the bigger pool of people that you solve, the bigger the wealth that you create is going to become. And so a lot of people say, yeah, but I'm trying. Okay, but you don't get paid. Like, trying does not equate to wealth transfer. What equates to wealth transfer is your ability to deliver a desired result to someone else. Okay, so that's first. Your ability to produce a usable or consumable product or service for someone other than yourself. Secondly, your economy is going to be determined not just by your ability to produce it, but by your ability to distribute a usable or consumable product or service for someone other than yourself. So, like, yeah, you wrote the book, but there's 700 of them sitting in your garage, right? So you produced it, but you don't have the ability to distribute it either, because you don't have an audience that you have influence over, because you haven't gone out into the marketplace and done what Harvey Mackay said in his book from the 1980s, dig your wells before you're thirsty. Most people dig their wells after they're thirsty. And by the time they get done digging the well, they've already died of thirst. Right? But you want to dig your wells before you're thirsty. And so a lot of times people don't have any distribution because they don't have any influence over an audience. And why don't you have an influence over an audience? Because you can't count your audience until your audience knows they can count on you. I wish I had some help in here. Oh, Lord. You can't count your audience until your audience knows they can count on you. What does that mean? That means you show up somewhere in the marketplace. Maybe it's in your town. Maybe it's in your church. Maybe it's in your school. Maybe it's in your business. Maybe it's in your neighborhood. You show up, and every time you see people in that environment, you are providing value. And so when they see you coming, they know this person has something good for me. I'm going to pay attention to them. And if you want people to pay you with their assets, you have to create an environment where they first pay you with their attention. If they don't pay you with their attention, they're not going to pay you with their assets. And so you got to show up. Like, it's interesting. There are influencers, I'll use that term, teachers, coaches, whatever, who have audiences bigger than mine. But their influence is less than mine. Well, how's that possible? There are people who have millions of subscribers on YouTube or millions of followers on Instagram, and they post something and they get a couple of likes or a couple of views. Like, I know people that have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. They post a video, and in a week it might get 6,000 views. Well, we're going to get 6,000 views in the first 6 hours. Now, I'm going to tell you why I believe that is. I'm not mentioning any names here because the names don't matter. But I'm talking about, there are people with, I know people, I can think of one person right now who's probably got somewhere between 5 and 7 million subscribers on YouTube. They post a video. If me and that person post a video on the same day, my video will get more views. Why? Because, okay, hang in there with me now. I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm not saying this is a bad idea. I'm just saying, like, prioritize your activities in a way that it gives you the ability to serve your audience at the highest level. And this is why. Because most of the time when they show up in somebody's feed, they're showing up as an ad. Right? Now, there's nothing wrong with ads. Ads are a great way to scale and measure the scale of your business. Because if you can buy ads profitably, you can make a lot of money. You're literally printing money. So I messaged last week my Facebook guy, my Facebook ads guy, because we run ads on Facebook. We just don't run ads on Google. But I messaged my Facebook ads guy and I said, how much did we spend last month on ads? He said $36,000 blah, blah, blah dollars. Okay, cool. Which is a lot-ish, I guess, depending on what you consider a lot. But like I never had a job where I made $36,000 in a year in my life, and we spent that much on ads, right? So I'm like, okay, how much revenue did we generate from that 36,000? 64,000. Okay, so what do we need to do? What do we need to do? We need to spend more money on ads, right? Okay, so, but even though we're spending a significant amount of money on ads, we went for like a very long time with $0 spent on ads. Like, we didn't spend money on ads in 2022. We didn't spend money on ads in 2023. And the first part of 2024 at all, like $0 spent on ads. So here's what happens when you spend money on ads and advertising shows up and somebody sees an ad. I mean, think about yourself. Think about yourself. You're watching this video. When you see an ad, what do you think? You think, what does this person want from me? Am I right? Isn't that what you think when you see an ad? Now, if they're a person who you respect and who you honor and whatever, or maybe their ad is good enough, you'll pay attention to it anyway. But your first unconscious thought is, what does this person want from me? But when you see what I call community service content, I made that concept, I made up that term, community service content, what's that? That's content that you create for people and you just give it to them, but it has to be valuable enough that you could have sold it. And it's not that you know that you could have sold it. When they consume it, they know you could have sold it, and maybe they're even a little confused by why you didn't. Is what I'm saying making sense? Yes. And so what happens is, and I'm going to go over here and draw on my board in a minute. I'm not there yet, so just hang in there with me. I'm going to go, and I got some illustrations that are really going to like dial this in for you. Like, it's going to be really, really, really good. Okay, so what happens is, if you continuously and perpetually show up with content that provides value for someone other than you, people will show up to consume that value. What if you created a YouTube channel? I'm just throwing this out there, and an Instagram profile. And what if you just created that for reviewing books for your niche? You're in the business niche, you're reviewing business books. And you're reading the books for your own learning, but then you're taking notes, and then you're teaching people not the book, but you're teaching people what you learned from the book, what the ideas that you got from the books. And what if you read a book a week and do one video a week on book reviews? I don't know if you noticed this or not, but there's like this huge influx of Instagram posts. These 6 books, read these 6 books on business, you don't have to read anything else, right? What if you had a whole, just an entire YouTube channel dedicated to reviewing business books? Or if you're in the relationship niche, relationship books. Or if you're in the crypto niche, crypto books. Or if you're in whatever, the financial literacy space, financial literacy books. If you're in the fitness space, fitness. Like, what if your whole thing was, I'm going to tell you what I think about what everybody else said, and you're just showing up as a reporter. You think you have to show up as an expert. You don't have to show up as an expert. You can show up as a reporter. You can show up as a reviewer. You can show up as a commentator. You're commenting on other people's stuff that they've created. And if you're good and you do that in a way that it provides value for people, people will show up in lockstep to hear what you have to say. If you're putting out content and no one's paying attention to you, it's probably because the content that you created was not nearly as good as you thought it was. It was the kind of content that only a mother can love. My baby created that video. I know it's got 3 views and 2 of them are yours, mama. Okay, so how do I create my economy? Now that we understand what an economy is. Let me give you the last one. So your own personal economy is determined by your ability to produce usable or consumable product or service for someone other than yourself, your ability to distribute usable or consumable products or services for someone other than yourself, and then other people's desire to consume or use the product or service you've created. See, if you create something that nobody desires to use or consume, it doesn't matter how much of it you create, because it's just going to sit there. right? That's the problem with creating inventing the invention you've always wanted to invent, writing the book you've always wanted to write, writing a book that tells your story. Nobody cares. But instead, what if you wrote the book other people wanted to read? What if you invented the invention that other people wanted to use? What if you created the solution that other people have been looking for? Then and only then do you deserve to get rich from that. What did Jim Rohn say? Jim Rohn said, the soil says to the seed, don't bring me the soil says to the farmer, I messed up the whole thing. Do you ever do that? You get paid to talk. And then all of a sudden, you can't talk anymore. You can just read. And you show up to talk and it just comes out of your, okay? So, yeah, you say, Myron, are you making fun of you? Yeah, I'm making fun of me. You're going to make fun of me, so I might as well get the jump on you, right? I used to talk there, I just read about it. But Jim Rohn said, before I messed up his quote completely, right? The soil says to the farmer, don't bring me your need, bring me your seed. The soil doesn't care what you need. It only cares about your seed. Okay. So, how can I, now that I understand what an economy is, what my own personal economy is, how can I create my own personal economy so that my microeconomy is booming regardless of what the macroeconomy is doing? That's the question. Is that a good question? Yes. I think that's a great question. So here's how it's done. It starts with that's a magnifying glass, by the way. Can you tell that's a magnifying glass? That looks like a magnifying glass. Okay. You discover a new awareness. And clearly, since so many people said it's a lollipop, we have a bunch of children in the room today. Okay, so you discover a new awareness. This is where it all begins. You don't know what you don't know. You're not aware of what you're not aware of. And so what happens is you discover this new awareness. Maybe the new awareness is you discover that poor people think that the primary purpose of money is to pay bills. Middle class people think the primary purpose of money is to maintain good credit so they can buy things they can't afford on credit. Rich people believe that the primary purpose of money is to turn it into more money. And you get this new awareness. You're like, oh, that's the difference? Okay, so from now on, I'm gonna make my perception what the perception of rich people is, and that the primary purpose of money is to turn it into more money. Right? What happened? You just discovered a new awareness. I used to think, okay, I'm putting my own business in the street. I used to think when I was making 20, 30,000 a month, I thought I was a baller, right? Yeah, I'm a baller. You understand? I'm making 20, 30,000 a month. I'm a baller. Play with me, big baller, shot caller, man of the world. So he said, Myron, you write any books? Book? No, book. Why would I why would I sell a $20 book? I'm selling these $500 courses. I didn't realize there wasn't much difference between the $20 book and the $500 courses. And so, no, why would I sell a $20 book? I never got this $500 course, right? Because, see, okay, new awareness, right? Most business owners think that the primary purpose of being in business is to sell the product or service that they sell and make money. But that's not the primary purpose of being in business. The primary purpose of being in business is to acquire customers. So if my primary purpose for being in business is to acquire customers, why would I care whether I'm acquiring a customer that spent 20 or a customer that spent 500 or a customer that spent 5,000 or a customer that spent 50,000? Because some of the customers that spent $20 will eventually spend 500, and some of the ones who have spent 500 will eventually spend 5,000, and some of the ones who have spent 5,000 will eventually spend 50,000. But some of the ones who spent 50,000, the very first thing they bought was a $20 book. But when I didn't know that the primary purpose of business was to acquire a customer, let me ask y'all a question. Y'all are the studio audience. Let me ask y'all a question. Are there more people out there in the world, do you think, who are willing to buy a $20 offer or a $500 offer? There are more people in the world who want to who are willing to buy a $20 offer. Now, if you wow them with your $20 offer, they'll let you sell them your $500 offer. And if you wow them with your $500 offer, they'll let you sell them your $5,000 offer. Now, there are some people out there, you can just tell them, hey, I got a $50,000 offer, and they'll buy it. Now, generally that happens because they've consumed more than $500 worth of your community service content. If you had sold it to them, they would have paid more than that, right? If you watch 10 of my videos, you've already consumed more than $500 worth of my content, because 10 of my videos is worth more than $500. And I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you, because I make sure that the content matters and I don't teach theory. I know that 10 of my videos is worth more than $500, even the free ones on YouTube. So I know if you've consumed it, you've already gotten more value than you've paid me for if that's all you've consumed. So I don't have to wonder whether or not you think I have something for you, or I think you want something, I want something from you. Like when I show up, you're watching this video right now, because like some of y'all are like, y'all got your alarm set, right? Okay, when Myron comes on at 10 o'clock, I'm gonna have my YouTube turn on. Why? Because you know that when I come, I prepared for this moment. I didn't come up here, I'm not winging this, okay? So you discover a new awareness. Once you discover a new awareness, the next thing you want to do is so this is number one. You discover a new awareness. Let me say this. Most people who don't have wealth, they think they don't have wealth because they lack access to abundance. In America, you don't lack access to abundance. You may not have as much access as other people have, but you don't lack access. You have access. They think they lack access to abundance, but what they really lack is awareness of the access they have. Frederick Douglass was born a slave. He was born into slavery. And he had access to abundance because he worked in the big house. And his master's wife was teaching him and some other slave children how to read, and his master came in and caught her, and he flipped out. And one of the things he said was, you can't teach these slaves how to read, because if you teach slaves how to read, then they'll start to read books and they'll realize that the world is much bigger than the world they live in now, and they will never be content to be a slave again. He said, and whatever you do, don't ever let a slave read the Bible. Frederick Douglass, as a 6-year-old, he's like, the man who can sell me away from my mother and my mother away from me, who could kill me and not be prosecuted. If this man is that dead set against me learning how to read, it is the most important thing I must learn how to do. And so, Frederick Douglass would take leftovers, scraps from the big house. He would trade it to poor white children in the neighborhood in exchange for them teaching him how to decipher letters. And every time he found a piece of paper on the ground, he would take it back to his slave quarters and he would practice by candlelight reading in the middle, or moonlight in the middle of the night. He would be practicing his reading. Every time he found a book. And Frederick Douglass became such an eloquent orator. I was 21 years old when I read his autobiography. There were so many words in that autobiography called A Narrative in the Life of Frederick Douglass. I had to look up some of the words. Frederick Douglass was born a slave, bought his freedom, had it stolen from him twice, bought his freedom 3 times. Became such an eloquent orator that he gained an audience with the President of the United States and the Queen of England, and was instrumental in abolishing slavery in the United States of America. You say, why am I telling that story? Because he had less access than any one of us anybody watching this video right now. And yet and still, he was born into slavery and died a free man. It doesn't, I get it, life isn't fair. But if you're an adult and you're just learning that, you're at a disadvantage. My dad taught me that when I was in elementary school. Life ain't fair. Okay, great, life ain't fair. Now I know, I understand the arena. It ain't fair. Some people have greater advantages than you. You can run, I can't run. But every disadvantage has advantages, right? Can't run, so I learned how to fight. You might outrun me, but you ain't gonna outwhoop me. Okay. All right. You say, Myron, what's your point? You have to become aware of the abundance, the access to abundance that you already have, and then you have to act on that access to that abundance. Or you can go through life saying, well, I just don't have a chance because I get it. I already acknowledge the fact that it's not fair. And there are people in the world, there are people of different genders and people of different races and people of different whatever that have more advantages than you. And some people of the same race and the same gender have more advantages than you. I get that. Doesn't matter. They had the advantages that were necessary for them for their purpose and the disadvantages that were necessary for them for their purpose. You have the advantages that are necessary for you for your purpose and the disadvantages that are necessary for you for your purpose. And if you think that all disadvantages are bad, you are delusional. Because everything that feels bad ain't bad and everything that feels good ain't good. And every hand up is not a good hand up. Why? Because sometimes for the purpose for which you were created, you had to grow up in a disadvantaged experience of life so you could develop strength in areas where you were currently weak so that when you stepped into your purpose, you would be strong enough to stay there when you get there. Amen. Rob, can you cool it off in here for me a little bit, please? Because I'm hotter than a forest fire right now. And so, do you understand? If Jesus didn't have haters, he would have never been crucified. If he wouldn't have been crucified, there would be no salvation. Amen. If Joseph's brothers wouldn't have hated him, he could not have become the prime minister of Egypt. See, your problem is not your problem. Your problem is that you think your problem is your problem. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Okay? Your problem is not the fact that your life is hard. Your problem is the fact that your life is hard and you hate the fact that your life is hard and you resist it instead of embracing it. Is that too tough? See, our problem is not that we have curses. Our problem is that we curse our curses and we lament our lamentations. And we take the things in our lives, our obstacles, and we make them bigger than us when God already told us they're smaller than us. What if every time you had a challenge, instead of, life ain't fair, life ain't fair, make it fair. I want the politicians to make it fair. I want God to make it fair. I want mommy and daddy to make it fair. It ain't fair. Really? That's what you think you desire? If somebody made it fair, you would never be able to fulfill your purpose. Stop hating on your hard stuff. Stop cursing your curses. What you resist persists. What you embrace becomes grace. And grace is a gift. What are you saying, Myron? I'm saying the fact that I've been walking with this brace on my leg and dragging my leg around for 63 years is a gift. It's a gift that when I was a child didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a curse. The fact that that when I was growing up I'm so blown away. Like people, okay, I want to say this in the right way. First of all, I'm going to say it like this. I am a black man in America who was born in a segregated hospital, so discrimination has negatively impacted my life every day of my life since I came into this world for the most part. Okay? So I'm not minimizing the reality of discrimination and racism. I'm not minimizing it at all. I'm just saying it's not bigger than you. Come on. Unless you believe it is. But it's not even bigger than you then. It's just your belief that it's bigger than you. That's what's bigger than you. And the fact that when I was growing up, I had to work 4 times harder to get the same pay, it's not fair. Well, thank God it's not fair. Thank God that you have to be in an arena where you have to work harder to get the same thing. Because when you get in a level arena, you will outperform everybody else that didn't have the disadvantages that you had to develop the strengths that you've developed. Yeah. Now, I'm going to say this. In the arena of race matters, I'm going to say this first and foremost. There's only one race, the human race. A person having different skin color doesn't make them a different race. We all came from common parents, Adam and Eve. Grandparents, Adam and Eve. So the whole idea of race, I don't know if you've ever thought about this or not, but race is not the result of racism. I mean, racism is not the result of race. Racism is not the result of race. Race is the result of racism. People created, like, people who felt less than, made themselves feel more than, so they could make other people feel less than because they already felt less than. So it's the common, like, okay, I feel small, so I'm going to make you feel worse so I can feel better. I actually like making people feel better. That makes me feel better. But I had to learn that. It didn't come natural. It didn't come naturally. Okay. So in the arena of race matters, white folks, let me help you understand something. Stop telling black people to get over it. Amen. Stop. Oh, get over it. No. You can't, by the way, you can't even understand the plight of a black person in America if you're not a black person in America. You can't understand it. You can't understand it. Like I can't understand the plight of my parents. My parents were so confusing to me when I was a child. Stuff they said and stuff they did when I was a child was very confusing to me because my parents grew up in a time where, like, Emmett Till was something they read about in the paper and they knew it could have been them. Right? They had a real, legitimate reason. I was watching a video by Judge Joe Brown yesterday. I don't know if you ever watched this guy. The guy is brilliant on a lot of levels. And he's talking about the fact when he was a little kid, he was riding with his grandmother to go visit some of their relatives, and they made the mistake of leaving too early. Because when you were black in the 60s and the 50s, like in the early 1900s, what you'd have to do is you'd have to travel at night, because if you traveled during the day, it was too dangerous. He said, and I can remember, we left too early, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm holding my mom's Coke, and she loved Coke. And all of a sudden, we're driving down the road, and the Coke bottle just explodes. And his mom said, "Baby, get on the floor. Somebody's shooting at us." He said, I was so concerned about the fact she was going to be mad because somebody, because her Coke bottle broke. She's like, "Get on the floor." She was very calm about it. And somebody shot into their car. And he was making a point. Some people weren't going to like the point he was making, but I'm going to tell it anyway. He was saying, yeah, Barack Obama's black, but he didn't have that experience growing up. And he was talking about the fact, which I didn't know this either, and he went into the details. You can go find it on YouTube. He was talking about the fact that it was an interview that he did on 𝐉𝐨𝐢𝐧, that Barack Obama and George W. Bush were cousins. Right? I was like, wow, that was, yeah. Barack Obama and George W. Bush were cousins and grew up together. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Anyway. So, yeah. Yeah. But that's not my point of the conversation. My point of the conversation is, like, for white people need to stop telling black people to get over it. Right? But black people need to stop thinking that every white person that doesn't understand the plight of black people is a racist. Just because somebody doesn't understand the plight of black people, that doesn't make them a racist. They just don't have a frame of reference. Any more than I have a frame of reference for what it's like to be a white person. You don't have a frame. It doesn't make you a racist just because you don't understand. Okay. I digressed. Kind of. But it was a good digression. So once I discover a new awareness, now I'm aware of something I wasn't aware of before. Now I need to determine, this is number 2, I need to determine a new intention. So if I come across a new awareness and I don't determine a new intention, I'm either stubborn or stupid. And neither one of those is good. It's not good for me to be stubborn, it's not good for me to be stupid. Right? And so once I discover a new awareness, now I'm responsible. Why? What did Jesus say? Too much is given what? Much is required. So when you come to a new awareness, now you are, when you didn't have the awareness, you weren't as responsible for it. But once you have the awareness, now you respond. You got to do something about it now, baby. It's your move. So you discover a new awareness, you determine a new objective, and then you decide on a new direction. I love the word decide. You decide on a new direction. I love the word direction too. So direction comes from the root word derek, and the root word derek means road in Hebrew. Like derech is the word road in Hebrew, right? Direction, director, all of it has to do with going from one place to another, right? So you decide on a new direction. What does decide mean? The Latin root de is of or from, and the suffix, that's the prefix de, but the suffix side means to cut, right? So you have an incision goes inside the body. Decide means to cut yourself off from. So this is the most, I'm a little geeky, so when people make a point and they mess up their point because they don't understand the etymology of words, it kind of like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. So forgive me if I'm being overly geeky, but I already admitted it in public, so it is what it is. If you say, 3 birds are sitting on a fence post, or 3 birds are sitting on a post, and 2 of them decide to fly away, how many are left? 1. No, all 3, because they just decided they didn't fly away. Well, that sounds good, except for you don't understand the meaning of the word decide. When you decide to do something, there is no not doing it. Now, you may choose to do something and not do it. You cannot decide to do something and not do it. If you decide to do it, it will be done. Why? Because decide means to cut yourself off from any other possibility. This is what I will do. This is what my life is going to be about. Nothing is going to stand in my way. Okay, so you decide on a new direction. So once I discover a new awareness and determine a new intention and decide on a new objective, then the last thing that I do so that I can create my own economy is I develop a new discipline. What is discipline? Discipline is I do what I'm supposed to do, when I'm supposed to do it, the way I'm supposed to do it. Don't miss this part. And I do it that way every time I do it. I develop a new discipline. And when I develop a new discipline, that new discipline turns me into a new person that can do things I couldn't do before I developed that discipline. Like, when I realized this, like, when I understood this concept, wait, you mean I can learn something I didn't know so I can set a new intention and then head off in a new direction with new discipline, and then this times this times this times this, it equals a totally different kind of life. This is some of the most exciting stuff I've ever thought about in my life. Can I tell you something? I've got my brother Rob back there. He will attest to this because he's known me his whole life, most of my life, because I'm older than him. That I have been practicing these principles for a long time. Can I share the good news with y'all before I end this video? Is it okay if I share the good news with y'all? Everybody okay? Say I'm okay. I'm okay. Here it is. Here's the good news. The principles aren't going to stop working just because you start using them. Now, I don't know about you. That's just downright exciting. Like, oh, well, I'm going to start using them. They're going to stop. No. They're still going to work when you use them. And if you will do this, you can create your own economy, and it doesn't matter what the economy is doing. I think back to the COVID propagandademic. And I'm not minimizing the fact that people died from complications and all of that. That's not my point. My point is a whole lot of stuff that I don't even have time to go into. But when the whole world was shutting down, the economic infrastructure of the world was coming to a screeching halt. Our economy, our personal economy went like this. Why? Because I discovered a new awareness. I determined a new intention. I decided on a new direction and developed some new disciplines. Stuff that I developed a new discipline of doing something that a friend of mine told me to do back in 2011. I remember when Dagan Smith said, Myron, you're really good presenting in front of people in a room. Why don't you just take that same thing and do it online? That's a good idea, Dagan. I think I will. So I proceeded to do it, not the next year, or the year after that, 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 or the year after that. But finally, 10 years later, I decided to do it. Why? Because I had to. Because the hotel that we had our event set up for shut down, and they said you can't rent the room. And so we had two choices: give everybody money back for the tickets, or make it virtual. We made it virtual, and I didn't have to go anywhere. And we did an event, and it produced a significant amount of revenue. And I was like, I should have listened to Dagan 10 years ago. So if you will do this, you can avoid recession and create your own economy. Stay blessed by the best, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.